Good morning, children. We are starting a new standard today, SS 8H11, Evaluate the Role of Georgia in the Modern Civil Rights Movements. Your learning target by the end of class, you should be able to explain Georgia's response to Brown versus Board of Education, including the 1956 flag and the Sibley Commission. In order to do that, you need to understand Brown versus Board of Education is a Supreme Court ruling in 1954 that stated segregation of public schools was unconstitutional. If you remember, Plessy versus Ferguson ruled that separate was okay as long as it was equal. But as we've discussed, there was nothing equal about it. So this young lady in the picture here, she wants to go to the school that she lives closest to. It's not a school for African American and black children, though. It is a white school. So her family takes it all the way to court. They get all the way to the Supreme Court fighting against the segregation, and they win. Schools are not allowed to be segregated anymore. But do you think the people that are in power here in Georgia at that time, that they were going to go along with this ruling? Remember, this is kind of backtracking. This is before Hartsfield and Allen, who we talked about, before they got to do all of their stuff. So think about what Georgia was like at that time. Their first reaction was changing the state flag. Okay, this had been the state flag from 1920 until 1955. It has our seal, our motto, red, white, and blue, very patriotic. Then Brown versus Board of Education comes out in 1954. All of a sudden in 1956, Georgia has a new state flag that has the Confederate symbol on it. Why would this cause so much unrest? What does that indicate to a lot of people? Different things for different people, but at that time, because of the proximity of the decision, Brown versus Board of Education, a lot of people took that as a slap in the face, and Georgia saying, we're not going to integrate, we're not going along with everything just because the federal government says so. And they don't. They don't actually integrate right when they're supposed to, okay? In 2001, Roy Barnes, he was the governor at that time, he manages to get the state flag changed. But nobody likes that flag. So only 3 years later, they go through it again, and they get the flag that we still have today. This came about in 2004, and like I said, it's still the flag that we have today. So that changing of the flag, bringing back the Confederate flag and making it part of our state flag is one step in Georgia's reaction to Brown versus Board of Education. And the next step is the Sibley Commission. Okay, so in 1960, a few years later, there's still a whole bunch of opposition concerning the integration of public schools. Even though the federal government says you have two choices. You can either integrate now, or you can close your schools, because schools get a lot of federal funding, and if they're not going to follow federal dictates like integration, then they're going to lose their funding, so you can just close your schools. Ernest Vandiver, he was the governor at that time, and he thought he should get everybody's opinion rather than just make the ruling and follow what the federal government was telling them. So he creates the Sibley Commission. Okay. The Georgia General Assembly has a committee that gathers information from Georgians asking how they felt about desegregating schools. They have hearings throughout the state, talk to all sorts of different people. This gentleman, John Sibley, leads it. He is actually, he wants things segregated. That's what he believes, but he thinks maybe a little bit of integration would be okay for Georgia. Maybe if they do just a little bit, it would be all right. However, after they do all these panels where the people are asked, do you want to integrate and allow any and everybody to attend whichever school, or do you want to close the schools? 60% of Georgians said they would rather close the schools than integrate. They would rather their children go without an education, which you guys probably think that sounds like a great idea. Let's just close school. But I promise you, there's not much in life you can do without an education. So these people were willing to risk their children not having an education and not having much of a future just to try and prove their point that they don't want to integrate. Okay? All right. You guys better be on your best behavior. I will see you maybe before the end of class. I'll be back. Best behavior.